we're live, and like I said, I don't know how many people pop in here, but
That's fine.
I I can see up at the top like if people start to kind of chime in and that. But
Right.
anyway, I just want to introduce you. You're Nolan from WildRose Garage. Uh, for any of my
Yep.
subscribers that like don't know who you are and that, but you're probably one of the longer channels that I've subscribed to. I
Yeah.
think I,
You and me go back a while. Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
Time's
I'm
gone
almost.
fast.
I was going to say almost like 3 years
Probably at least. Yeah. Yeah.
because I think I found you. I was looking at like G body stuff, and I
Right.
came across.
I think it was the blue car I just got going when I was playing with that a couple years ago. So yeah, it was maybe 4 years even.
Yeah, because when you put the 425 in it first,
That's a different one. That's a 442 one I have.
okay.
I bought it as like a rolling chassis, and I had
Mm,
so much Oldsmobile stuff kicking around in the garage that I figured,
yeah,
oh, I'll buy a car and clean the garage up, and I could put a motor and a tranny and stuff. And
yeah,
I actually drive that car quite a bit, and it's never left me stranded, and it goes good for what it is. So,
yeah.
um, yeah, it would probably. I've never taken it to the track, but I'd say it would probably be like a 13.6 kind of car, which is all right for a $230 junkyard 425 Oldsmobile. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I took my blue car out cruising last night, and I just put my stroker into that 48 cubic inch one, and it worked really
Yeah.
good. Yeah, I can't say anything bad about it. I think I put a little more stall in. I used to have a 2500 Hughes converter in it.
Mhm.
I put a 3000 in it, but the Olds motors are so torquey. They they flash them a little higher RPM than advertised, so it's a little looser than I would have liked, but live and learn.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, do you guys have a pretty good cruise scene right where you
Yeah,
live?
yeah, it's pretty good. There was a lot of cops out last night. Most of the guys with older cars, they behave well. They'll go on some back road or something and open it up, but pretty well behaved. But a lot of them, I'd say, like newer Camaros, Mustangs, all those Hellcats and stuff, those are the guys that get themselves into a lot of trouble. They're
Yeah, that's pretty
in
bad
the,
here in Close
yeah.
too. I've a couple of different times going down the freeways. I've almost been hit by like those guys, like the street takeover dude. Uh,
Yeah, I'm not into that kind of stuff.
yeah,
Like, sure, I like back road drag race is one thing, but they're doing donuts and they're just acting like hooligans. It's just nothing I'd want to be associated with. That's for sure.
well, what's happened to me is I'd be coming up on my exit, and
Right,
traffic on the freeway, so they pass on the right side. So they went into the right lane, and then
right, right,
they board it. So I'm getting ready to turn right, but they didn't see my taillights because there was a car between us. So as I'm getting ready to go, they go flying by me and like almost hit them, almost did a Pitman maneuver. But that's happened like 2 times, being passed on the right. And I'm like, you
yeah,
guys are insane.
yeah. No regard for anyone else's life.
Yeah. Yeah. And then those street takeover guys, they're definitely making it, worse for
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah,
we used to always get around and go race, back in the day. But you would set a place and then you'd go there and then you would race. Like in Sioux Falls, you'd go down on the loop downtown in
right,
Sioux Falls, and then you'd set up your race. And then there's a couple different places you could go. The most popular, there's like a freeway 229 that goes around Falls, and there's two bridges up north of the northeast corner of the city, and they're almost exactly a mile or a quarter mile apart. So we called it the two bridges. So
right,
you'd go there. It'd be late at night. There weren't too many cars going on the freeway, and if they were, you're all going the same way. So
right,
it's not
right,
like you
right.
had traffic. So that was always kind of a cool place to go race.
Yeah,
And
I bet.
sometimes we do stoplight
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Like shutting it down within a block.
yeah, yeah. Just yeah, 200 feet kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Those are always kind of fun.
Yeah, I like that too. And then the guy that wins backs off, and then the guy that loses comes blowing by you 5 seconds later. Like they always do that. It seems. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, when you were in high school, Matt, did you always have like Oldsmobiles or?
No, actually, so I don't know. I had a lot of cars when I was young. I was pretty hard on stuff, but in high school, I actually had a '65 A-body Barracuda, with a 273 and an A904, and I put an 8 3/4 rear end in it and stuff. So I had that, and like, my dad was always into Mopars. My dad always had like A-body darts. Like
Yeah.
he had 270 340 dart swingers. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, I've had a bit of everything, but um, I wanted another old car, and
Mhm.
the G bodies, they're not worth a lot, and you can get one pretty decent. And I wanted a Regal. I was gonna get a Regal at first. Was my
Mhm.
plan, like a fake Grand National kind of thing. And my plan
Yeah.
was to put a 455 Buick in it, because I always heard the 455 Buick was like the hottest GM motor ever made. So I thought that would be a good combo. And I couldn't really find a decent one. And then a Cutlass popped up that had a 455 Oldsmobile in it. So I hummed and hawed about it, and I decided, wow, this thing's already got a motor in it. So I bought it. It was just a junkyard smog 455, like a mid 70s one, kind of like the 440 you're doing right now.
Yeah.
And all I did to it, it had turbo 350 behind and 342 gears. I put just a performer intake. I had like the 442 style exhaust manifolds, they flow a little better than your average log manifold. True dual
Mhm.
exhaust, and I gave it 36 degrees of timing. And I actually ran 13.8 in that car, which was pretty good for a
Yeah.
junkyard motor. And then I decided to build a stroker, and it's only just over a second faster, but it cost me, 10, 12 grand. So, uh, yeah,
Learning
hopefully
like,
it lasts
right?
for a while.
Yeah. Tony's Hot Rod Garage said hi. He's down there in the comments. I don't know if are you able to see some comments popping up and down your screen at all?
Yeah, yeah. How's it
Okay.
going?
Yeah. But yeah, like high school, I was a Pontiac.
Okay,
My first car was like a '73 Firebird Esprit, but it had a 400 turbo 400. It was a
right.
column shift, no console, bucket seat. It was pretty
Really?
wild. Then I got a '76 Trans Am, and that thing was horrible. I stopped racing when I got that because it was like 160 horsepower, with the
Yeah.
old small 76 400. And then my pride and joy was a 70 GTO, the
Oh,
four
that's nice.
speed. Yeah.
Nice car.
But I was like bodies. Me and Chris Testa were talking about, people didn't, that say old muscle cars aren't fast. They didn't live through that like 79 through 80,
Great.
like, when,
Yeah.
cars didn't have any power. So like you said, the G bodies were pretty hot. And if you put like a different V8 in them and stuff, you
Right.
could make them
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah, there was not it didn't matter what it was. There was nothing that really had any performance. Well, if you look back, 1978 fastest vehicle in North America was a little red express truck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, faster than a Corvette. So
Yeah. A truck with a 360.
yeah, a truck with a small block. Yeah, so it shows what the times were like.
Yeah. But yeah, the GTO was probably the fastest car I ever had. And I always tell people too, like, when I go to YouTube, I'm watching different channels, and I
Right,
like a lot of the smaller channels because they're pretty cool. And I don't think anyone's going to confuse me with like a how-to channel at all because I've always been kind of a car show guy.
right,
I'd always buy a nice car, but it was already pretty nice.
right.
I never really did my own wrenching in that. So when I come across channels, like there's guys like you and my friend Mopar Jeff 604, you're just guys in your garage just building stuff, left and right. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah, it's a hobby. It's something to kill a guy's time, and yeah, and his
Yeah.
wallet. But there's worse things a person can do with their money. That's for sure. So
Well, but when you're doing it yourself, your wallet takes less of a hit because a guy like me,
yeah,
it's like I always
that
equate it to
that's
when I was younger. My buddies all played golf, and they would invite me to go along to like the par 3 courses,
right.
and because I sucked so bad. I started to not get as many invitations. Well, that's kind of why I feel like in the YouTube car community. Like I want to learn about cars, and it's just been awesome and taught me a shit ton. But
Right.
I'm still like in the first grade of car building, and
Yeah, well, that's the way
so
it
so
is. It's you got to
sometimes,
start somewhere, right?
yeah, sometimes when I'm with Jeff, my whole goal was to like do most of the work on this 440, but he can't help himself, jumps in, and it's like it's just second
No,
nature for him.
I think I watched the video. That was the guy that was using the dial indicator on
Yeah,
your.
yeah,
Yeah,
yes, yeah,
I could tell. He's had his hands in a motor or two. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
That's his race car background.
Okay.
He built
No, he
me a-
seems like. Well, you have a good guy to learn off of. I'll tell you that.
oh
So
yeah, because originally I was just going to stab a cam in there with like it was kind of a mystery cam.
right.
I was just by word of mouth what it was, and then I was like, well, I'd kind of like to give this engine a chance. So I talked to Jeff, and then once we started figuring out, like, well, at least let's start with a cam where we can make the rest of the engine work with it. And I probably did overcam it. You made that comment about
It's
like,
very easy to overcam an engine that has low compression because you any of the compression with overlap you bleed off. You don't have any to spare in the first place. So um yeah, with 9 to 1 you can do something pretty decent with it. With 8.5, it's it's, you kind of almost need stock or just overstock type of cam. But no, I've seen low compression engines run pretty good. Compression, if you change a motor like uh from 9 to 1 to 10 to 1,
mhm,
pe- people think like it's this drastic change. It would be like maybe 20 horse. It's
yeah,
not as drastic as a person thinks.
that's what Jeff was saying too.
Yeah,
He's like, compression plays a part, but how much of a
right.
part on the whole combination?
Not as much as people, everyone always says, oh, it's 10 to 1 or 12 to 1 or whatever. Like you do gain power, but it's not as drastic as like a set of cylinder heads that flow way more
Yeah.
CFM than what came factory. So
Well, the other side of with the cam that we chose is, the 906 heads are probably the worst choice for a low compression engine because they have such a big combustion chamber. I think they're like about 86. Depending on what you read, they're 86 up to like 90 something,
right,
depending. I don't know, like the later castings because they never really changed the castings and they just got worn out or what. So the calculations I did with a factory thick gasket put me at about like 8.45 to 1,
right.
but I'm going to use the thinner gasket. I bought the thinner gasket, and then we did take the heads in to get reworked, and that's why the engine's not done. And they're going to surface the heads.
Right.
And then there was talk about whether or not maybe the guy might even just try to shave just the tiniest amount off. So I might be
Yeah,
close to
yeah. The
9.
only thing is, if you milled, I've milled lots of heads, and if you don't have a adjustable valve train, then your
Mhm.
lifters can be preloaded too much. There's one thing.
That's do too much. You
Yeah,
got to worry about your foot pad length because that's going to throw that
right,
off. And then
yeah,
plus, is your intake manifold going to seal? Because
yeah. I've
if you're going to mill the heads, you need to mill the intake.
Yeah, a guy want yeah, if you're gonna mill the heads, mill the intake, you can only do so much and then you're not gonna be able to bolt it on anymore. I think I have 60,000 off my heads on my stroker olds, and
Mhm.
yeah, I had to oblong the intake a little bit to make the bolts go through. So
I'm pretty sure he's just going to make sure they're
yeah,
flat.
just make sure it's a clean surface. It'll be good. My
Mhm.
folks have a 1980 Winnebago with a
Mhm.
440 in it, and it's probably a 10,000 pound unit, and it moves it just like a pickup truck driving around. It stays 70 75 miles an hour up any hill. It never downshifts.
Mhm.
It's got a pretty steep rear end in it, but it goes through the three gears, going through the intersection, just chugs along, and out of all the big blocks, they're pretty decent on fuel.
Yeah.
Like
The,
way better than a 460. Like a 460's got to be the worst, and I'd
oh,
say better than a GM 454 too on fuel. Pretty decent. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if it's because the Mopars having the smaller, like, the worst flowing heads.
Yeah.
And maybe the
Maybe at Port Throttle, the not the best flowing head, but you have high velocity through the ports helps it with the fuel
yeah,
mileage. I think those Carter thermal quads they came with too were with the spreadboard design were probably pretty friendly for gas mileage. So
mhm, yeah.
yeah, nothing wrong with it. I think you'll be happy. It'll be able to run 87 octane and it'll have pull anything you need to, and it'll be good.
And I always try to think of like phase two, and like when I like my Belvedere have like kind of thought of it in phases. Well, the truck is kind of like a phase thing too. I was actually the reason we jumped on this 440 was I had the dreams of possibly getting that engine back in the truck and then being able to drive that down to no name nationals.
Right.
But that quickly fell apart too because the truck sat so long. I'm worried about like will the wheel bearings be any good? you know,
Yeah, you want to do a few shakedown runs and kind of go over everything. That's for sure.
yeah. I might drive it the 3 hours back to Sioux Falls a couple of times before I try to drive 12 hours,
Yeah,
you know.
your Belvedere is a six was 63.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I actually my buddy in high school he had I think it was a 63 Dodge 330. It was a slant six push button car, and then he had a 63 Belvedere, and he still has them, a two door Belvedere. It had one of those poly head motors in it when you got it,
yeah,
and it was seized. It was a push button 727, and he put a we are just young, so he put a 318, like a used 318 in it, and he had like a 355 gear and stuff in it. And yeah, I used to bomb around in that car quite a bit. Um,
yeah.
yeah, I always wish you would have put a big block in it because those cars I like a super stock clone, like a 413 clone kind of thing, because they were a bad car in their time. Like they were a badass car. So they
Well, it's
they
definitely
kind of have a sweet spot with me, those cars, because when I was a teenager, my buddy had one and it was a cool old
yeah.
car. Yeah.
Well, Tony points out in the comments, it's not just compression; it's how much you keep in the cylinder. Yeah, there's like the dynamic compression, and
Right.
like you
Yeah.
said, Nolan, you made a comment on my video. I wanted like a narrower, like load separation angle.
Yeah.
You know,
If your intake valve opens like it, or you could advance the cam, it'll help fill the cylinder better, and you don't want any much overlap because just just because you have low compression, you can't sacrifice as much to bleed off as you could if you were, at
yeah.
11 to 1 or whatever. Yeah.
Because a long time ago, when Gary built that 512 stroker that I never got to use, that thing was about with the trick flow heads only have like a 72 cc combustion chamber. So when we put
Okay.
those the four the 512 short block I had, it bumped it to damn near 15 to 1 compression.
Yeah.
But Gary, I think it was like 12.5 to 1 compression. But Gary's like, don't worry about it. That's like static compression. He goes, we
Right,
put
because it's so much cam that it bleeds it off so
yeah.
much.
He goes, he got aluminum heads, so that's worth a point. And then he goes with the cam that he put in there. He said it off some compression too. So
Yeah.
he said,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's right.
and
And
he dynoed.
aluminum,
We dynoed that engine on 91 octane.
yeah,
So
aluminum
and
head too is less prone to detonating just because it doesn't store the heat, so it doesn't diesel, so you can get a little more out of it. But yeah, nothing wrong with that.
yeah. And the same with like the Jack Pine, that was a pump gas engine. He actually laughed at me because I told him I was
Really?
running gas in it. Yeah, it was 11 to 1 compression with those Edelbrock heads, and it had a 640, 640 Ultradyne cam. And I thought I was being safe by running, race fuel. And then Gary's like, "Man, we dynoed it at 91 octane." He goes, "You're giving up some horse." He goes, "It probably burned hotter and like a little bit,
Right.
faster with the 91 as opposed to the race gas." He goes, "Race gas isn't rocket fuel."
No, he's right. A lot of people get octane confused with like it's more explosive or anything. It's just slower flame travel or an ignition
Yeah, it's
speed.
more controlled. It's just
Yeah.
safer.
Yeah. So, yeah, a lot of people, if you have a low compression motor, high octane in it, you'd probably lose power because
Yeah.
yeah, just the way that it would light so slow. So
Mhm. Yeah, and then there's this whole like heat range of spark plugs and stuff. It's funny, like when I think about you know stuff, because I don't have any hands-on experience. I don't have
right.
any engine building experience. I haven't tried enough combinations to know what I'm talking about. So I'm always kind of gathering all these little nuggets of information that everybody talks about, and I
That's
got them down
that's the best way to do it.
in my head.
No, that's the
but
best way to do it. Take a little bit from everyone and then come up with your own conclusion.
Yeah. So my goal is like when we do pull that 318 out of the truck, I want that to be the first engine that I rebuild.
Yeah.
I'll just take it home and then keep taking it apart and putting it together without any intentions of running it.
Yeah, it'll be a
And
good one to a good one not like if something goes wrong, it's not the end of the world. It's just a 318, right? Well, you know what I mean.
oh yeah, and the sad part is that engine runs so smooth, and it's been sitting out at Ryan's on their farm outside, and I've
Right?
never even had to jump the battery.
Hmm.
I just go in there, I pull the choke, I give it a few cranks, and she fires right up.
Fires up. Yeah.
And it runs like a sewing machine. It's got blow by though. There's smoke coming out, of the back, and it leaks from the rear main still and everything. And I'm kind of like, man, you can see how that truck worked on the ramp. It was a great gear 4 speed.
Yep.
You put it first, you hop out, you let it
Oh
roll
yeah.
down the field,
Just lug
throw the
around.
bale back.
Yeah. Yeah. They'll
I'm like the track.
yeah.
It would just
They're like 6.5 to 1 the first gear. So yeah.
yeah. So it's like, man, that I could make a case to keep the 318, but 440 is always better.
Yeah. Yeah, and in a bigger truck, I don't know, maybe not empty, but if you're pulling a car on a car hauler or something, I bet you the
Mm,
440 would probably get better mileage than a
yeah,
318 because you wouldn't have to have it would move it effortlessly, where the 318 you'd have to the floor a lot and you'd have to be downshifting on every hill. And um, there's definitely a like torque to weight ratio where it's more efficient to have, you know, uh, a bigger, more powerful motor because one that is underpowered and has to be pinned all the time. That's
yeah,
not that's not going to be efficient either when it's working as hard as it can. So
yeah, yeah. And then like I was kind of alluding to earlier, like the phase two of the truck would be, I was talking to Gary. I was over at his shop checking on my other engine because he's the one building the one for the Belvedere, and he does have, like I said, a 516 heads. He's got a set of 9 fit. He's got the closed chambered heads.
right,
The problem with that is, I'm still going to have money in the heads that on the truck because I took them to get cleaned up, and they're going through them and
yeah,
making sure the springs and stuff and everything fit the cam that I chose. But to grab a set of old heads like that, I'd have to have them completely reworked, and by that time, you're talking I could have bought a set of stealth heads. So that's kind of like phase two. The stealth heads have the smaller, like 70 some cc combustion chamber. You
right.
know, eventually someday, that'd be kind of cool to throw like a set of stealths on there. And then
Yeah,
I'd already have,
see how it is now first. Yeah, I think you'll be going to be more than happy with it. Honestly,
yeah.
I think it'll work great for your needs in a truck.
Well, I was thinking, it's going to be at least 300 and I was hoping for like 350 horsepower, 400 torque. I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
I'll beat the torque, but Gary's like, he's not so sure, and because of the cam. And I'm like, well, Gary kind of has more real world experience, but from the factory, the 2 barrel 440 made, it was like 205 for the 2 barrel with
right.
like 3 foot-pounds of torque. So I don't have a very high bar to beat.
Yeah, you got to remember though too, it probably had single like 2-inch exhaust with a horrible Y pipe, and that's with all the accessories on it, and not enough timing, and
Yeah.
it would, if you had one completely stock and you had exhaust on it, put a better tune than they came with stock, it would probably be a lot better than those numbers say. That's
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, like I said, my Silverado with the LS makes
Hmm.
345 horsepower, and that truck's way heavier than the Dodge.
Right.
My 10, and it slings that truck around like it's nothing. So
Right.
like, no, I'm going to be happy no matter what. And the
Yeah,
four
and
speed,
your Dodge will probably make like similar power, but it'll probably be at even a lower RPM, which will be more user friendly in a truck, especially with the standard that so you don't have to downshift ever. It can just chug along in high gear up any hill, and yeah, I think it'll work really well for you.
that's the only thing. The cam that I chose, I'm like, will it affect the low end torque? But the 440
Yeah,
it'll have enough torque to pretty much compensate. But
right.
will the
The only thing
cam
I
be happy?
the only thing, how right now you could put it in low gear, like the bull low, let it idle and it just drives along smooth.
I don't think
I
it's going to
find
do that.
that now when you do it, it's going to be kind of bucking because like the choppiness makes them. Yeah, they don't do that. It won't do that anymore. But that's the way it is.
I used to do that with my PO. Like I called it riding the cam. It had a Lanati cam in it, and it was
Right?
pretty. Squeaky. So I like just kind of ease out in first gear, and the car would kind of start doing that. You know,
Yeah,
and you would tap the gas just as the car was lurching, and start bouncing your front end as you're going down the road.
yeah, yeah. I believe it. Yeah, hard
Yeah.
on U joints because I think the drive shaft's going kind of like forward back because it's on decel, excel. But it's all in good fun.
19-year-old Mark didn't even know what drive shaft or U joints were. So I just did it. I didn't know it was, what I was doing
Right,
to the
right.
car.
Oh yeah. And if you did
Back
know,
then,
if you didn't know, you probably wouldn't have cared anyhow.
yeah, for the effect. But yeah, back then my car would be broke. That's how I would describe when I had mechanical problems. My car's broke.
Yeah, it doesn't move anymore.
All encompassing. No idea why or what. So
So, your Jack Pine Savage car,
yeah.
what was the best pass you made with it?
Um, so it would consistently run 6.8. I guess I never looked to see what the fastest 6.8 it was.
Okay, well, nothing wrong with that. That's pretty good.
No, yeah, the best quarter mile was 10:21 at like 122, 123 miles an hour.
That's moving good. And
Yeah,
it was a gorgeous car to look at. The paint, it was almost too nice for a race car, to be honest.
well, that was the conundrum. The car had such heritage around here too. Anytime I took it out, the family would always get phone calls, and like, "Hey, the Jack Pine's out," and I was always afraid. It had a fiberglass front fenders and hood and front
Right,
bumper and had aluminum front bumper brackets even, and aluminum or a fiberglass trunk. So like there was times at No Name Nationals, like the first year, my radiator, I kept having trouble with radiators and stuff, and it puked up out of the overflow. So
right.
we had to back line, and everyone wants to push on the front of the car, and I got to quick stick my head out the window. No, don't push on the front.
Yeah, because it's very thin fiberglass too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was so well done. I've never seen a car with fiberglass
Looks so
parts
straight.
that fit. Yeah, it looked like
Yeah, I had no idea it was fiberglass until you told me. It looked straight as an arrow. The paint looked deep. It was
it.
beautiful car.
Oh yeah, it weighed 3,100 pounds for a B body.
That's pretty good. Yeah, for a B body with a big block, that's pretty good. That's like what a small block Dart would weigh or Duster or something. So yeah, that's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, that was it was, and yeah, and I definitely was, and I'll be worried about my new car too. But yeah, it was kind of a because the car had the heritage and it was so nice. I always did kind of worry. Plus, we had it kind of maxed with the power that it had.
Right.
I think it was flexing the car because all it had was those Mopar Performance bolt-in subframe
Subframe
connectors.
connectors.
Yeah, so I mean, if we were going to keep running it at that power level, I was thinking, we're going to wind up having to like weld in some nice subframe connectors. And I thought about because when you have fiberglass dampers on a Mopar, you kind of take away from some of the front
Right.
structure.
Right on the
So
unibody.
we were thinking we're gonna have to do the down bars in the front like we did on my '63, to
Right.
help help brace the front a little bit. I think it would wound up 60 footing a little bit better,
Yeah, probably.
and it got to the point where I would have to start changing the car, and I'm like, I can't. My hands are kind of tied. I don't
Right.
want to change the car because, but yeah,
Was that a
Tom's
was that a
tickled to
Dana
death.
60 in that car? Dana 60?
Nope, it was a 8 3/4.
Was it? Mm.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Jeff's had really good luck with 8 3/4. We did. I did upgrade. It had a sure grip in it with
Right.
30 spline axles, and we upgraded it to the 35 spline axles, and then I had like a diff 430 spool in it. So, and then Jeff welded on a brace on the back.
Oh, on the
So
back, yeah.
it was beefed a little bit, but I don't think I was in any trouble with that 8 3/4.
No. No, they powered a lot of cars over the years, and they're a good rear end.
As of right now, that's what I plan on running, almost the exact same thing in the Belvedere. Except I would kind of like to have a sure grip in it, but it's hard to find. I don't think I can get a sure grip with 35 spline.
So at that point, it's spool or nothing, is what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I looked
Yeah,
at
I've had lots of spooled cars, and if you're gonna drive it on the street, I don't know, they turn so wide radius, and you're wearing tires out, and for a drag car, 100% spool all the way, but as a street car, not ideal, that's for sure.
yeah. So until we dyno the engine in that car, I don't know for sure what Gary's got this like slide tool to help him figure out, your weight of your car, your
Mhm.
RPM, and like the height of your tire, and like what gear ratio would maximize, what time you're going through,
Yeah.
what RPM you're going to cross the line when you're racing and everything. So we'll figure out what gear ratio I really want to use, because I don't know if I'll need 456s, because I'm going to probably have more torque. This engine's going to be right around the same power as the engine that we took out of or that was in the jack line. It's probably only going to be about a 600 horsepower engine, but with the blower, it's going to have like more instant torque. Uh,
Right.
so it should get moving a little quicker. But this car is going to be a little bit heavier. I'm thinking it's going to be between 34 and 36. NSB Customs is in here. Those are great guys. Have you ever watched their videos? NSB.
I probably have.
They're the ones
I've
that had
watched
that great.
I've watched a little bit of everything.
Yeah, uh, they're my favorite guys. That like I wanted to pit with them last year, and
Right.
pretty cool.
My
But yeah,
I was gonna say, my brother had he bought a Duster 71 Duster, like back half drag car, but it was a
mhm,
rolling chassis, had a trans in it, but no motor,
mhm,
and it was a lot of fiberglass. It was about, I think it was in the 28s, 2050, something like that. And
yeah,
for a motor, all he did is he bought, it was for $1,500. He bought a 440 Magnum that was just re-ringed and bearinged,
mhm,
and all it had in it was like a purple shaft cam, a torquer intake. So, and it was complete from intake to pan. He put it in, he put a 950 double pumper on it. It had a 456 gear and I think a 31-inch slick,
mhm,
31 1450. And his first pass, he had it all tuned on a dyno. His first pass just on pump gas did 11.8, and then he had second pass, he had just a little 100 shot on it, and he ran
mhm.
1090s with it. But with the
Nice.
456 gear and kind of RPM limited motor, because all it was a 440 Magnum motor.
Mhm,
The 456 gear was too steep for it because he was going like 120-mile-an-hour trap speed when he did 1090, and
mhm.
I think it was over $6,000. Like he said, it was kind of nosing over at the end. It probably would have been better with a 410 or maybe 430.
The Jack Pine made its power all in by almost 5,800
Yeah.
RPM. So I did go past that when I was racing. Sometimes I would like put like the 6100 chip in,
Right.
and
And it would hit it.
I lost. I lost a couple of races whenever I had that chip in.
Yeah. No,
I
that's
don't know.
um
He's good time garage. The first race I raced him, I went up on the chip and he nosed over and beat me, and I was like, "Damn it!"
but that's not a lot of RPM, and a motor like that lasts like hundreds and hundreds of passes, where if you had a 283 Chev or something that spun 9 grand and you're spinning at that every pass, you're not lasting very long.
Yeah. You gonna take your uh, cutlass?
I'm
You gonna
gonna
take
take
that
my
to?
cup. I gotta start working on my Studebaker Lark I got, but I'm gonna next time there's drags here, I'm gonna put drag radials on my Cutlass and see what it does. It'll be low 12s for sure. If it did
Yeah,
11.90 or something, I'd be even more than happy. But I'm gonna
yeah.
say like 12.20, which is fast enough for a car on the street.
Oh, dude, me and Chris were talking about that in the last life. Um, if you took a person who's always like just watched videos and they think you have to have 1,000 horsepower, and you take the average Joe and you set him in a like your Cutlass
Yeah.
and you run it, you could lie to him and tell him it had 800 power,
Oh,
and they wouldn't.
for sure. I'd say my Cutlass is probably about 500 horse, 600 foot pounds. But yesterday, when I took it out, I launched it a few times on the street on the kind of industrial area. I had to pedal it and I had to drive that sucker. Like, she was wagging her tail pretty good. Yeah,
What do you
plenty.
do for
What's that?
what do you do for traction on a G body? Do they have that kind of
On a
triangulated?
G body, they have a horrible 4 link in the back that's very prone to wheel hopping. So I have traction bars on this one. Um,
Mm,
Usually, what a guy will do is take the lower control arms off, box the lower ones. You can box the top too, but it's more important to do the bottom. Make sure
mhm,
it has a sway bar in the back. You don't need a sway bar in the front. It helps the front end drop quicker without the front sway bar, but they don't drive near as nice.
yeah.
Um, some guys will use station wagon springs and put a football or a airbag in the passenger side spring to preload it. And then
Mhm,
for the front, V6 springs out of a V6 car seem to work the best because they're kind of spongy and they really let the weight transfer.
yeah.
And after you do that, they hook pretty good.
Yeah. I figured you had a couple tricks. And
Yeah,
like Mopar, same thing. They say you want to run the smaller, like 6 cylinder or like
torsion
uh,
bars.
torque bars.
Yeah.
But I also a friend of mine, well, from Facebook, he sent me some pages out of the guy tuned the Mopar missile or the Mopar missile, the Challenger, the golden black Challenger and stuff.
Right.
And they did a lot of experimenting with suspension and everything. And one of the things that said in there was that you know up to a certain horsepower, the smaller torsion bars on a B body did prove to be a benefit. But then once you got into like the really high horsepower ranges, you wanted the stability, so it wasn't really
Right.
worth the
Yeah,
trade.
everything's got to be matched. It all depends what your goal is.
So I'm probably going to have like 440 torsion bars in my Belvedere, and
Right.
then this one's got Caltrack, so this is going to be a whole new like learning curve,
Right.
because I know
They, a lot of
I want to,
people say good things about them. So
yeah. So it'll be interesting. I was hoping like before I decided to sell the jack pine, I was like, hey man, I'm gonna have a foot brake, uh, super stock spring car, and then I'm gonna have like a trans brake Caltrack car, so
right,
that you
right.
can like see the difference. But anyway, no longer got the jack pine. Hey
Yeah.
Rooster,
Oh
much
well,
as you're
you'll have lots of fun in that 63. They're a cool car. There used to be my dad always used to get the Mopar Action magazine back in the day, and there's an advertisement on the back that I don't know who it was for, but they always had a 63 Belvedere, and it was called the Teacher's Pet, and it was a cool looking super stock 413 car.
that's the other thing too. Like the jack pine was beautiful, but
Hmm.
the body on the 63. I fell in love with it. I mean, like
Yeah.
I used to, like, say the '69 Roadrunner used to be my favorite car, and then nowadays I'm kind of like, sure, I'd like to have one, but dude, the '63, I just like everything about it.
Yeah,
There's a
not that I like them for a different reason. If I was to have any of those cars, I would have a 62 Dodge, like 413 super stock car, just
mm,
because they were probably the most ugly car ever produced, but they were the fastest thing there was out at the time. So that's why I like them. They're so ugly. I think they're cool, and they definitely held their own at the track. So
they always reminded me of a frog.
yeah, they
The
had
rear
some weird styling to them. Like I don't think he could have made. I don't know whoever designed it how he figured that was a good idea at the time. And I think the Valiants from that time, like a '61 Valiant, they were to me they're not the prettiest car ever made, but beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So to each their own.
So when I was right before COVID,
Mhm.
I bought a '68 440 from a guy south of the cities and out on his farm. And as I got to talking to him, a lot of times guys are a little standoffish, but the more you get to talking and you realize it's another car guy, he took me back, showed me his collection, and he had all those little like Valiants with the 413s, the Mac cars.
Oh,
He
that's
had he had
cool.
like two real ones, and then he had made like two, like replicas, but
Right.
that was kind of the thing. I've got a short of a car that it was a Valiant wagon, and it was green with a black painted top. It had slicks on the back, and it almost looked like that. But I've got a video of it if you look back in the shorts. It's a little green Valiant, and that thing was the most cool car I ever.
Yeah.
I was like, but that was one of his first race cars, so there's no way in hell he was ever going to part with that.
Yeah. Too much sentimental value. Um,
Yeah.
That's like, I really like gassers, like the old straight axle leaf spring stuff. Like I've always, and I have a '63 Comet that I made into a gasser. But it's one thing I'll say about gassers: you can take the ugliest, nastiest looking car ever produced. You put
Mhm.
the straight axle in the front, and so it's real high in the air, high and mighty, and it turns the ugliest car into something cool. Like I've never seen a gasser I didn't think looked cool. So it's kind of funny
I
how
was
that works.
I was this close to going gasser with the '63.
Yeah,
Uh,
they'd be pretty cool done like that.
like
But
maybe down. And I was like, I just love the way it looks once we finally got it kind of after we got the floors and everything in it and we mini tubbed it and it was just sitting there with the front low. I'm like,
right.
no, I'm gonna
That'll
leave it like that.
Yeah. No, you probably made the right choice because it's pretty rare car now too. If it would have been 20 years ago, I'd tell you to put a straight axle underneath it. But now I don't know. Now that I've gotten older, I have
Mm.
more respect for not bastardizing things like I did when I was younger too. So
I hurt some guys when I cut the fender wells for fender well headers though.
well, if that's what you got to do, you got to do. There's no way around it. So
Well, I mean, I could have gone with but that's when I saw the car. Like whenever I see a car, my brain tells me exactly the way I want it to look. Like my
right,
satellite, that silver and black satellite. When I bought it, I was going to put the Roadrunner hood with the black vents and black wheels on it because it was silver and black, and and then I loved the way that car looked. It was just beautiful.
you got to
Well,
think
the minute I
for
saw the Belvedere, I imagined blower with fender well
right.
headers.
No, and you got to think for servicing it too. Those Dodges in general aren't the nicest to have headers on, how the steering is and everything else.
Mhm.
And you know, I'd probably rather have fender well headers and have to cut a square in the fender than if you ever have to work on it with the ones that are in the frame. They're
Yeah,
not real nice, they're not real nice. So
we created our own steering issues too because I made Jeff use A body fender well headers because he couldn't find B body,
right.
and he did the racing trick of setting the back too and centering it and stuff, and then so now we might have to like modify an oil pan and stuff. We're messing around with different Mopar steering linkage and stuff, and we'll make it work. But
Yeah, it's part
but
of the process. That's for sure. You could always go back to putting a gasser axle in it if it costs you too
well,
many
yeah,
problems.
I know.
That'll
Uh,
fix it.
yeah, and I jokingly sent him a picture because QA1 makes a coilover conversion with rack that would solve all my issues for $7,000.
No, no, I don't like stuff like that in cars like
I don't
yours.
I don't want to change it torsion bar. Yeah,
No,
I wish I
no,
wish.
that's the whole thing. Mopars had, your leaf spring with the stubby front on them and a torsion bar, and that's what
Yeah,
they ran. Or a lot of GMs were, coils front and back, and that's what made racing back then interesting to me because back then, in those cars day, they were running what pretty much came from the factory, and they had different ways about doing it, but they were all competitive with each other on the track.
yeah.
Yeah, that's my take on it.
And that's why I like old cars. I don't like I mean, you can modern swap your car, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
But I'm not really look at it.
I-
And when I get in my old cars, I want it to drive like an old
yeah, you
car.
want it to feel like and run like it and everything else. Yeah, I like same thing with, like, I'm big into drag racing. I like drag cars that can, improved but still have like the factory setup, like super stock springs, Mopars. If you have coilovers in a four link and everything's the same. It's not how it came from the factory. It's all the same.
Just Mopar Joe is giving me shit about putting Chevy parts on my Belvedere because he's saying Caltrax are for Chevy.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what I think.
Mm,
Like, Dodges always used to run this pinion snubber, right? And they put the pinion snubber so when you're at the track, so it's already touching, like when the car's
mm,
just sitting there. And the reason for that, in my opinion, where you always seen that on instead of slapper bars or whatever on Mopars, is
mm.
because the 8 3/4 housing is about the flimsiest housing ever created, and that's why your one had a bracing put on it. So by putting it on the pinion snubber on, the snubber hits immediately, and it takes all the torque off the axle tubes. Where if you have, a slapper bar or Caltrac, it's putting that stress on the axle housing now
Mm.
because they're outboard at the springs. Where if the pinion comes up, hits the snubber, it takes everything away right there. So I think that is one reason why the pinion snubber was so popular on those cars back in the day. But they punch them right through the floor if you have it adjusted on the street too tight, and it's the same
I
idea.
I actually did try opinion snubber. Jeff has never ran one on any of his race cars. He races Dusters mostly, and he runs the 8 3/4 end. And he's got some pretty high horsepower stuff.
Great.
So without the snubber, I was getting the best 60 foot. I think the car I ever got with him driving was like a 146, which is outstanding, for an old
Nothing wrong with
Mopar.
that. Yeah.
But I actually I knew he was against the snubber, and a guy gave me a adjustable snubber.
Right.
So, because of that book, with an automatic, you'd want close to the floor as possible. Not just barely, almost not touch. Some,
Right.
like you said, had or actually preload, and it hurt my 60 foot. Um, I did two passes with it like that, and I noticed my 60 foot was actually slower. So then when I took it off, all of a sudden my 60 foots were back, and I'm like, oh, okay, that makes.
Did you notice that it really anti-squatted and the back end really rose up with the snubber on it, or not really?
I didn't really, because every time I would get up to the staging lanes, it's like because I'm new to racing,
Right, right,
so trying to do all my stuff in sequence, so I don't miss anything, um, you know, and that's the one thing I kind of hear is I was planning on becoming one with my car and getting a
hmm
lot more experience, and that's not going to happen. But yeah, there's an art to the whole racing, the whole drag racing and everything. So I was starting to have kind of a team, so I felt more comfortable. Except that it would wind up being like 6 months before I'd get to the track again to work on my reaction time.
Yeah. Oh, it's all there's even like you can put in on Google, you can just put in Christmas tree reaction time. You can pick the style, like a pro tree or whatever kind of tree
Mm.
you're using, and you can just sit there and press a button, getting kind of used to the lights coming down. So
Yeah.
there's lots of ways you can work on it.
Hey, King Eric, another guy joined the chat there. But uh, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you getting. You got footage of when you took the car out on the street?
I got a little bit. I didn't put any of it up, but I had a couple like 10-second videos of from in the passenger seat launching it, and it no, I'm definitely happy with it. It runs well, and yeah, I got it's fast enough. I always have a problem. Oh, pull it back out, change this cam, try it again. You
Mm.
know, it, I find I end up doing that, and then it gets put on the back burner, and I don't get to enjoy the car. So I'm just gonna leave it now. And like I
Yeah,
say, low 12s with a 342 gear is a pretty fast car that's still friendly to drive, and just call it good.
and that's what I'm jealous of, having something to drive.
Yeah, especially when the summer comes around and you see all the cars out, and you you got some at home, but it isn't quite there yet. It's kind of a piss
I've got
off, that's for sure.
I've got a really awesome car that's in 1,000 pieces.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
then I got my truck, and my truck's on another farm, but it's in Mankato, so I'm gonna be going there, this week on my days off, and, I get to drive it out in the country, but, my wife won't let me bring it home because it leaks oil all over the place, and power steering fluid, and, I gotta figure out if it's the power steering box or if it's just the hoses. Hopefully, it's hoses, but
yeah, probably just the pressure hose or something.
yeah, because I mean, it's pretty much the last video I had. It sounded like there was absolutely no power steering fluid left in it. Oh, King Eric's asking about. No, I sold the Jack Pine Savage, Eric. Um, I don't know if you knew that I sold it. Yes, it was my Cornet not running, and I sold the satellite. That was everyone asked me, "Do I regret selling the Jack Pine?" And the truth is no, because it went back to the guy who built it with his grandfather. So I'm like, I got no sadness. I'm like, it
No,
was
it
a
went to
beautiful,
good home.
and it's home, dude. I couldn't think. There's only one person that would probably treat the car better than me, and he's got the car.
Right. Nothing wrong with that. No, it's a good way to let it go. It's
But the
you know
satellite, if I was smart, I would have kept that satellite and then just got that thing. It had a 318 two barrel in it, and you know, it would have made it a great driver. Like I should have just kept it, like. But I was always going to put a 440 in it, so I never did anything to the 318 that was in it, and
right.
you know, and then I put 373 gears in it, and it wasn't fun to drive on the highway anymore.
Yeah, it's give and take with everything. Um, One thing, like if for anybody with a 318 that's kind of underpowered, I will say those 5.9 Magnums, like from the newer pickups, because that's when I built that 5.9 Magnum for his Studebaker. Just a bit of cam and stuff in them. They're a pretty peppy motor. They'll definitely wake up, an older car, and quite simple to swap it too.
So what do those Studebakers weigh?
They're a full frame car. So my buddies last year with the 360 727 aluminum had 360. Stripped down was 2720,
Mhm.
but now he's got a cage in it and some bracing. So I bet you he's gained another 100 pounds. So he'd be at 2,800 now for sure. So with him in the driver's seat, it's 3,000, 3,000 pounds. On 100 shot, it does 1132 is the best it's done. But no, it's had lots of passes on it now. It's probably had 40 passes, and it's still holding up good. So for a cheaply built motor, like a completely stock but refreshed Magnum 360 with a cam and a set of aluminum heads, it's lots of fun, and it doesn't need race gas, and yeah, it's not a bad little car. They're very sturdy little car.
King Eric was asking about where you're from. Are you from like Alberta or?
I, I'm from Alberta, yeah, which is I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, so I'd be about 6 hour drive north of Montana, Canada border.
Okay.
Straight above Montana. Yeah.
Because I knew when you mentioned your time, I figured you were, farther west. I know like north of me is like Winnipeg and that, I think.
Right. Right. So I'd be 2 over from Winnipeg.
Mm.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a. Was there any chance you might be able to go to No Name Nationals this year? Or?
This year financially I'm not doing so good. So but yeah, same with last year and then the year before. My car I had I put it together really, really fast. I had all intentions of going. And then I took it to the track to run it. And
Mhm.
I haven't even fixed it yet, but I think it's a Chinese converter. I put in a cheap torque converter. It was like advertised for 3,200, but it seemed like that maybe behind a small block Chev, but it seemed like it just blew through it. Like I was going through the traps at 5,500 RPM and I was only
Mhm.
doing 100 miles an hour. So I got a different converter for it. I've just been busy. Yeah, work up here definitely slowed down a bit in the last couple of years. I'll tell you, I'm a plumber by trade, but
Mhm.
as for new construction stuff, it's pretty slow up here actually.
And that's everything
Yeah,
everywhere. So I'm kind of wondering what it's going to be like because to me it seems like it's quieter this year. All the talk and stuff about the nationals. There haven't been hardly any all outs, and uh, you know, the first year, it was pretty hot, and then the second year, John
the
said
second
it was
year
big,
had a pretty
but it
decent showing. Yeah,
but it seemed like it was about the same. I guess I didn't know much difference and stuff, but I'd like to see that keep going because I mean, I don't know if John Silver intended, but like being able to get a hold of was so much easier because John had
right.
your information. So
Right.
I could
Yeah, no, I've
John.
me and John have talked this several times over the years, but you
Yeah.
gotta see for me, it's so many miles, like pulling a trailer,
Mm,
there and back, it's gonna cost me, $3,000 in fuel and it's and take time off work. So, it's $4,000 for me to go.
yeah.
If it was a closer, it'd be a lot more convincing to go, but I'm glad the guys that go have fun and hopefully it gets bigger every year and you guys have a better event.
Well, the biggest thing about it, though, to me, is it did tie a lot of us together, though. Even
Right,
if you don't go to the event, there's people that are aware of the thing, and you get into the community, like
right, yeah,
know you because of the original, like
right, right,
working
right, yeah,
500.
mhm,
So it just brings like the community better together, even if people don't make it,
right.
and like, and
You
then
get
John.
more familiar with what other people are wrenching on and stuff like that.
Yeah, and like I'm like I've always liked your channel, but I had no idea how to ever get a hold of you or anything.
Right,
So
right, right,
I'm like, "Oh, John knows how to get hold of him." So I'm like,
right,
"Hey, ask him if it's okay if I have his number." And John's like, "Sure." That's the cool thing. John respects people's privacy,
right.
but he's hooked
No,
me up
I
with different people's numbers and stuff. But I always run it by them first because some people don't want.
yeah, yeah. No, I don't bother me none. So no, I'm glad we got to touch base. But yeah, I'd like to tell you. So you're into Sasquatch stuff, I take it?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I kind of am now too. But I when I had kind of a experience, I didn't know nothing about him, and I didn't really clue in what happened to me till about 10 years after. So. Um,
yeah. Let's talk about that.
so like where I am is like I have the mountains on the west side of our province, like the
Mm,
Rocky Mountains, and there's a lot of pretty much north of me, not an hour north of me, it's just bush for up to the
mm,
Arctic, right? There's very, very few roads, very few anything. So, um, yeah, it's still pretty wild out here. Well, we'll leave it say it like that.
mm,
And I'm kind of an outdoors guy. I hunt a little bit. I really like fishing. Fishing's kind of my go-to thing.
mm.
And it was about I think I was 23. I'm 41 now, so close to 20 years ago. Me and my buddy went fishing. We're gonna go fly fishing, and I had a 71 Ford truck with a 390, and I had an old Vanguard camper. We're young, didn't have much money, but I still had fun with what I had. So
Mm-hmm.
me and my buddy left after work on Friday, and had the camper in it. Took our fly rods, and I had a little dog, Odie. He was a little pug, like the push face, little 25-pound pug. So we drove into the mountains, because in the mountains there's streams and rivers and stuff everywhere, and it's good for fly fishing. So there's a road. We weren't right in the national park, because the national park has got all these fishing restrictions, and you gotta pay a park pass, and it's a bunch of BS. So just outside the park, there's a road called the Forestry Trunk Road, and it's just a logging road, is what it is. It's pretty much like 4-inch round stones for gravel, and it's just logging trucks just driving like bat out of hell down there. So that's all there is down there, and it goes for hours. You can drive that thing through the whole province almost. So we drive down the Forestry Trunk Road. We don't really have a plan where we're going. We just need to find a nice spot. So we're driving down this road, and then I start heading west. It would be towards the national park, down like almost like a goat trail, like a, not even a gravel road, just a kind of a crappy trail that would probably be used by gas guys or oil field guys or mining guys or something like that. So we drive down there, and then we kind of see where the water is, and we drive closer, and we park, I'd say 60, 70 feet from the river. And it's kind of where we are. It's all treed, but there's kind of an opening. And there was a little corral someone made. So horse people probably go there and do, horseback rides. And there's no one around. There's not another vehicle. There's nothing. So we get there. It was just getting dark when we got there. So probably 9 o'clock at night, maybe 10 o'clock. We got there, kind of set up lawn chairs, get our stuff together, start a fire. Me and him are both kind of bad, because we were up at 5 o'clock to go to work that day, and then drove all the way out here after. So we're having a fire. I might have had a drink or two or a Coke or something, and I was kind of tired, and it was probably about midnight by now. And I said, I'm going to go to bed. And I was going to take my little dog, Odie, with me. And my buddy Wes said, he says he's going to have one more drink, and then he was going to go to bed. So I went and laid in the camper, and soon enough, I heard him come in. And as I'm laying there, it was almost like a woo woo noise. And it sounded to me, because I was half asleep and I didn't really know nothing at the time, I thought it was like a loon, like a bird, like a loon. It kind of made a similar noise to that, but not thinking, because I'm half asleep laying in bed. There's no loons there. Like, there's not a lake. It's a pretty fast moving river. There are no loons in the mountains there. So, but at the time, didn't think nothing of it. And then I remember laying, and I heard this knocking noise. And to me, it sounded like a guy chopping wood. And it sounded to me like, if you're trying to chop a real knotted up piece of wood, and you get the axe stuck, and you just keep trying to split it and trying to split it. And the timing was perfect. I remember thinking, holy crap, can that guy chop wood? But it was like a knock, 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 knock. And it was perfectly timed. Like, they were perfectly timed. And I, laying there half asleep, I thought it was just some guy swinging an axe as hard as he could for about an hour.
Which makes sense. O'clock in the morning.
yeah, exactly. But like I say, I didn't think much of it at the time. But there's no one around. Like, there was no one anywhere near us. Like, within tens of miles from us for sure. There's nothing around. There's not a peep. So I get up before my buddy in the morning, and when I get up, all the stuff we had is just fucking destroyed. Like, our lawn chairs are chucked in the bush, and the cooler's smashed, and everything's just a bloody mess. And my buddy Wes, he likes to have he likes to have a drink or two. So I thought, what the hell, did he get pissed last night and destroy everything? So I go in the trailer and or the camper, and I'm pissed off, and I tell him, so what, he's sleeping, and I shake him, and I said, what, you get pissed up last night and destroy everything? And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? So he eventually gets himself together, gets up, comes out and looks. He's like, well, it sure as hell wasn't like this, like when he went to bed. And he told me before he went to bed, he said he was sitting there with my little dog. And like I say, we're surrounded by trees, but we're in a little opening. It was almost like a 40, 50-foot kind of circle. And like I say, the river was close by. Like you could hear the water flowing. And he said he was sitting there in the lawn chair at the fire with my dog. And then he said my little dog went across from him, like in front of him, to the tree line and was barking at something, like barking, barking, barking. And then he came back, and that dog was so scared shitless, he hid under my buddy's lawn chair, just shaking.
Mm.
And my buddy said he didn't think much of it, and then he started hearing noises behind him. And he says when he heard it behind him, that's way too close for his comfort, so he grabbed the dog and he went in the trailer. So this happened and years went by. Like years and years went by, never really gave it another look, right? Didn't think much of it. And it just so happened, my same buddy that I was fishing with that time, he was over at my house, and we're sitting there on the couch. It's, Sunday afternoon or whatever. And I'm going through the channels, and then we start watching a Bigfoot show, like a Discovering Bigfoot or something like that. So we're watching it, and then they start talking about this wood knocking, right? And then I start thinking back, like it just kind of light bulb went on, because I remembered it sounded like someone chopping wood all night, and they were doing these noises, and it was the same noise I thought was a loon, and say anything to each other. We just look at each other. And you remember that? And he's like, "Fuck yeah!" so it was kind of weird how we came to know what it was, but definitely opened my eyes for sure. Because I'm not making this up. I don't have anything to gain from it other than people probably think I'm crazy. But definitely something was out there, and like for instance, this guy is commenting it could have been a bear. Well, I've never seen a bear pick up a log and pound it off a tree for hours straight in perfect timing. Yeah, if it was definitely a circus bear somewhere out there out in the Rocky Mountains. But yeah, very, very neat experience that I didn't think much of at the time, but there's no doubt in my mind that's what it was. And there's a lot of reports where like in my parts, like it's yeah, not uncommon.
Well, me and a friend of mine, Nomadic Van Addict, he knows I'm into Bigfoot, and he's always
Right,
been kind of UFOs, and we both used to listen to Coast all the time and all that
right,
stuff. So we formed kind of a bond. And then one day he tells me, he's like, my buddy who has this hunting acreage said all of his trail cams are down, and you have a blurry picture of Bigfoot. And he was kind of half joking, but the guy tried to send the pictures, and of course they're blob squat. You can't make really shit out of them, but you can make shit out of them if you look hard enough and you try to
right,
make
right.
shit.
But it's not clear.
But the story behind it was, his trail cam always puts up tons of photos, and all of a sudden he goes to look at it, and it's definitely 3 photos on there. He went to the camera; it was pointed downward. So I laughed. I'm like, "Well, we got to go up there and do a Bigfoot investigation," and we're doing it all tongue in cheek and everything, right? So we go up there, and he knows I'm like the Bigfoot guy, and he's more skeptical than me. Doesn't believe
Mhm.
at all, but he enjoys making fun of me, and I enjoy having like fun
Right.
too. I laugh
Yeah.
about the whole subject. So we go up there, we're walking in the woods, and the guy like takes us back to where the camera was, and then we're walking back, and it's like you said, I when I was growing up a kid and like heard about Bigfoot, I never heard about like tree structures or anything. Well,
Right.
we
I know
walk
about
into
them.
we walk into this area, and there's like these two, like, or three, like, huge arched trees, and you're like, yeah, the wind did it. Well, the arches were down, and then there were other dead trees wedged in.
Oh yeah, the way they have them stacked, it
Yeah,
isn't natural.
and, and those trees didn't break off there. There are no stumps for those trees that were wedging them off. And
Right.
then there was another one where the tip of it was pushed down into the dirt,
Yeah.
um, and I could not pull the tip out of the dirt. And I'm like,
Unreal.
I didn't make a huge deal of it because my buddy always makes fun of me and stuff. But I was kind of like, dude, I never knew much about tree structures. This really seems like something that the wind did not do.
Right. What did he have to say? His explanation for.
Well, he's so okay. Like I said, he's a huge skeptic, right? So, we did a night hike. We're walking around, basically, like a little bit of alcohol, walking around in the dark, doing a
Yeah.
big investigation. But we get out to this pond and we hear like a, like a big rock got thrown in close to us, but it could have been a
Right.
beaver, two beaver
Right.
tail. That's what we
Right.
told him. And then we heard that twice. But then on the way walking back, we're all walking and we're kind of quiet, and we heard like a off to the right in the darkness, and it's like we all heard it and we stopped. We're like, "Did you guys hear a growl?" Because there was like, well, as soon as we heard it, you couldn't tell whether like you really heard it or not. It wasn't like a real obvious, but it was
Right. It was
really
faint.
subtle, and it was barely above like what noise we were making walking. But we all stopped and heard it because we all stopped at the same time and looked in the same direction. But anyway, so time goes by, right? And he's like still skeptical. We started that other channel together, Bad Bigfoot Reviews. Well, he does boondock. He's got like he calls them Craigslist vans that he makes into like campers, and he's
Right.
always going to like northern Minnesota out in the woods and camping, where he'll be the only guy in the campsite. And I've always asked him, "Have you ever had anything weird happen?" Like, nope, not one, not ever. Nope, nope, nope. So the one day, he comes back and he goes, something threw a rock at my truck. When I got up at about 3 in the morning in the wintertime with snow on the ground. He gets out to pee real quick, and he heard crack right behind, like someone threw a rock in his camper, and he's like, "That was weird." And then just recently, he was back at that camping acreage and stuff, and he said he was like, it was dark, and he was walking by a section of trees, and something yelled at him. And he goes, "You know what?" He goes, "I've been going up there since he was like a teenager and stuff with his buddy, and they hunt that ground all the time." He goes, "I've never heard a sound like that before in my life." So that was kind of funny. I had kind of the reverse thing because I've always been into Bigfoot, right? So I've
Right.
always into everything, and I'm like keen to every new possible thing that's Bigfoot related. I'm like the Zane Bigfoot guy, like that. And it all happened because when I was 10 years old, the big muddy monster was being seen down in southern Illinois, close to where my grandparents lived. So when you're a 10-year-old and you're hearing there's this possible monster that's real in the
Right.
woods, it. But then you get older and you forget all about it. You reach puberty, you start like racing cars and taking out. You forget all about Bigfoot.
Yeah. 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 Chasing girls and.
Well, I had a weird thing happen to me, but the weirdest thing I had happen was about 2019 in August, late August, and some buddies of mine wanted to go on a 4-day hiking trip on the Superior Hiking Trail. And the one guy's a marathon runner and he's skinny and he's like in amazing shape, and the other guy is 21 years old and he's like 6'4", 250, solid muscle
Big man, yeah.
and youth. So he never gets tired. Uh, so we're going on this hike, and I'm the old fat guy, and I'm sucking wind, and they put me in the middle so that way I didn't lag too far behind.
Right.
But as we're going through the woods, it's on a Monday, and there's nobody else out there, and we're pretty far back. We had to have a van take us all the way up to where we were putting in, then we were going to hike our way back. So we're hiking, and I heard like crack, 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 and I jokingly thought in my head, like, "Oh, wood knocks, ha ha ha." But there could be construction there because people do cabins and stuff. I don't know where they're
Right.
at or stuff. So I'm like, okay, it's some dude chopping wood. And then we keep going farther and farther back, and then I heard it again, chop, chop, chop. Like the knocks, and I'm kind of like, it's weird because how many times are you chopping wood or driving a nail where you do it once every hour. Like
You're either framing or shingling or you're not, right?
he's the laziest framer I know. Like, oh well,
Yeah.
time for here. Woo! I drove that nail in, and so, but I was like, it's kind of ironic because there was three of us too, and I'm like, like Mark, you're this crazy Bigfoot guy. So then we had to get to this one part where we got out of the woods off the trail and we had to follow a gravel road and then get back on the trail farther down the road. And off to the one side of the road is nothing but a marsh. And from the side that's not a marsh, there was a tree that was broken off and it was kind of like pointed downward toward the direction of the marsh. And there was all this grass that was pushed down and on that side of the road. And then on the other side of the road, it was pushed down and it all went down into the marsh. And I'm like, okay, deer, and the tree just happened to get snapped because of winter. So we get to where we're going, we go around that lake, and we wind up missing the place we were going to camp. And I've been awake since, like, I work overnights. So I was up all the day before getting ready. I couldn't sleep that night. And I was the guy that drove us 4 hours up north, to go on the hike. And we go
Right.
straight hike. So at this point, I'm about 30 hours without sleep and I'm worn out physically. So we get to this lake and I set up my pup tent. I'm the one closest to the path that goes down to the lake. And, and then we tie our stuff up in the bear hang. And then my buddy's in um, one of those hammock tent things. And the other
Okay.
guy's got a tent, and he's closer
Yeah.
to where we came in from the trail. But I'm the one closest to the lake and closest to the woods. And I can't sleep. I'm so tired I can't sleep.
Right. You're
Those guys are
overdone.
those guys. As soon as they lay down, they're snoring. They're out cold, and you can hear the deep breathing and the snoring. And the fire just died out. You know how you hear the last couple of pops of a fire as it's finally like kind of dying.
Right.
So fire's completely dead. Those guys are sawing a log, and on the off to the right into the woods beside me, I hear a whoop, and
Yeah.
I'm like, no fucking way. I'm like, and just as I'm thinking, no, no fucking way, I hear a whistle over by my buddy's tent. And I'm like, they're supposed to whistle too. Kind of like, this is bullshit. I'm like, no way, Mark. Crazy Bigfoot guy, be surprised. This is just bullshit. Like, don't believe it. And then I start hearing footsteps coming from the woods toward the side of my,
You must have
and
been scared shitless.
and I'm like, up at the head of my pup tent. It's like one of those sleeve type tents that you slide in. I had my like keys, my wallet, my phone. I just start jangling everything, and they stop. And I'm like, okay,
Did you have a firearm or anything with you or no?
no, no, we don't have any. And there are two. But anyway, so I just jangled everything, and it stopped. And I'm like, okay, my heart's in my throat, and I'm listening, and I'm listening, and I'm listening, and then finally, I kind of calmed down myself, and then I could hear my buddy breathing again. And this time, footsteps come up from behind my tent, up the path from the lake. So I jangle everything again. Joe, and Joe wakes up, and I hear his tent zipper. So I jump out of my tent. He jumps out of his. I'm like, "Did you hear that animal?" Because I wasn't going to tell him that the crazy Bigfoot guy hearing a
Right.
Bigfoot woods on the first night that we're camping. You know. So he's like, no, no. He goes, well, maybe it's a bear. He goes, shine the bear hang. So I shine the bear hang, and there's nothing there. Well, he jumps back in his tent, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna turn around real quick and shine my light in the woods, where I heard this step first time. So as soon as he gets back in his tent, whip around, it's just like it's an LED light, so it just washes everything white, and it takes
Right.
my eyes a little bit to focus. And then it was kind of odd because it wasn't up high; it was like about 3 to 4 feet off the ground, off into like the right lower toward the lake where it drops off. There was a drop off that went down to like some lowland that went to the lake, but about like 4 foot up there, I saw two like eye shine briefly. I'm like literally, I barely noticed them, and the only reason I noticed them is because as soon as the light hit them, they turned toward the
They
lake,
move
and they were about like here
far
my
apart.
eyes. They
Yeah.
were about this far apart. And I was like, no way, no way, no way, no way. So I grab my tent, I pull it up by the stakes, and I drag it right next to Joe's tent. And I plant it down. And I put all these branches around my tent. I'm like, okay, so this way, if anything approaches my tent, I have to step on some sticks and wake me up and stuff. So I go to sleep, and I had some kind of weird dream stuff. And there was one point where I was kind of like, I could hear Joe breathing, sleeping, and it seemed like sometimes when he would exhale and start to inhale, I could hear something else continue to exhale. And I'm like, that was probably just my brain. And then, so I finally kind of fall asleep. And the next morning, I wake up and all the branches are gone from around my tent. But I didn't say anything. And then it turns out Mike uh, wondered why all the branches were, he was afraid someone was going to trip over him. So he wound up being the one that moved the
Oh,
branches. But I never told those guys that shit happened, because I didn't want to be the crazy guy.
right,
Dude, that every is like, I mean, it's like if I was going to make up a story and I listened to enough podcasts, I could make that entire story up based on stuff that I heard from other people.
right,
So I did do a podcast with Shannon LeGros, and people would like, "Oh, you didn't see anything," and
right.
like, but I'm like, dude, I didn't make any of that up. I mean,
No, no. Yeah, for what? Yeah.
yeah,
My brother is a pretty avid hunter. He's got anything that's walks or crawls for the most part. And him and my uncle and a couple other guys in the fall, they usually go moose hunting, and they go up by a place called north of a place called Fox Creek, and all it is a oil field kind of area. There's nothing there. And my brother said the one time he was there and they're sleeping in a wall tent, he says he could hear wooden. He was in the same tent as a guy that was probably in his 60s, and the guy snored. And my brother says he could hear like a wood knock in time perfectly to his snoring. So it'd be like, and then bang, bang. And he
yeah,
thought, that's weird. So he's trying to get at the guy's attention that's snoring. He's like, Harold, Harold. And my brother says, as soon as he whispered, Harold, like very quietly in the tent, it stopped instantly. It stopped instantly. And I used to work with a guy, and he was a decent, honest guy. And he used to live in the province next to me, but kind of in the mountains in British Columbia. And they have a lot of reports and stuff there too. And he was kind of a hippie guy. And he said he used to have a 4x4, like 22R Toyota pickup, little pickup. And he was kind of, like I say, kind of a hippie guy. So him and his buddy were driving like a back logging roads, kind of in the mountains, foothill area, smoking a joint and just going for a cruise one morning. And he said there was about 6 inches of fresh snow on the road. So it's just his tracks on the road from his little Toyota truck. And he says he could see tracks crossing the road. So he got out and looked, and sure as shit, it was like big bare feet. And there's nothing else around. There's no other vehicle tracks. There's nothing. And he actually, I seen the pictures myself. I was at his place one time, and he took pictures and he put like a dollar bill down for reference and showed how far they were apart. And he showed all around, and there was no tracks anywhere. Like, so it was just coming out of the ditch and crossing the road, but it was like 6 inches of fresh snow. So it's pretty hard to fake that. And I always thought that guy Troy that said that story was 100% honest. And in the pictures he showed me, I don't know how it couldn't be real. So right, right,
like Bigfoot stuff,
right.
but I never wound up doing
Oh well,
it. And I kept it the car thing. but because of that, I jokingly bought this hat. Well,
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
I'll wear it to car shows, and I even wear it out in public, and people come up and want to talk to you about it and stuff. When I dropped off the Jack Pine Savage, his neighbors came back intentionally in their truck to stop and talk to me. I thought they wanted to talk about the car, and they're like, "No, do you really believe in Bigfoot?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, here's the deal." He goes, "My grandfather, his entire life, never once ever said anything, and then one day when they're like he was in his 80s and stuff, they're sitting there around the house, something about what came on TV, and he goes, "Yep, I seen one of them." And they're like, "What?" They'd never heard him ever talk about it before, and it's like, oh, they worked on a farm, and yeah, it's like one night on the farm, this big giant hairy white thing walked along the wood line, and it freaked him out. But they didn't know anything about it back in the day, other than he just saw something weird, and he didn't think anybody'd believe him, so he never ever talked about it. It wasn't an everyday form of conversation.
No,
And then that at one time when he was hunting, they had some like weird noises around too. Heard a couple of screams, and so yeah, every time I wear this, and then because of this hat too, there's a guy that big into Mopars, and he asked Ryan Barsness if I really believed, and he goes, "Yeah, they actually did an investigation." He goes, "Well, I got this cabin way up north along the almost to the Canadian border in
right,
Minnesota."
right,
And he goes, bought it from some old Canadian guy who lived up there, full time year round. And when he was buying the land from the guy told him, like, yeah, he won't go out at night unless he's armed to the teeth because of the Bigfoot. So the guy always laughed about it. But he bought the property, but he hasn't been up there since 2012. And
oh,
there's and so he gave me permission. I haven't talked to him. We were going to go, and it kind of fell through. And my buddy Andy are talking about doing it, but we don't want to go now because it's all buggy. It's all mosquitoes and ticks and everything. So
right,
this
right.
fall, I'm going to talk to him again about going up to that cabin, just for the hell of it.
No, you should. You'll have a good time regardless.
Yeah, I mean, like worst case scenario, we camped. you know, so free use of a cabin. My nephew's
No,
in here.
it's definitely a eye opener, and I find it quite interesting. There's what pisses me off is the about the whole thing is people trying to fake it and
Yeah.
hoaxing and stuff. Like there's a guy in my province. I think his name's Tom. Anyhow, he's got a big Sasquatch channel, huge. And
I think I know.
do you know who I'm talking about?
I do. I do. Anyway, yeah, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Slavic Bigfoot I can't or
Yeah,
something. Okay, so that guy, I'm sure he's seen
Todd
stuff
Stand
before. But what's that?
Todd Standing.
Todd Standing. I'm sure he's seen them before and whatnot, but I think he's hoaxed things and he kind of ruined any of his credibility to me. For me, anyhow, that's my opinion.
And that's how I think it starts out for some people. They have something weird happen, and then they get into the whole thing, and then that's why I kept checking myself on that weird thing that happened. I was
Right,
like, everything that I could have described, you know, would have been what might have happened. But there were no other people out there camping in that area at that.
right.
We were
Yeah,
the only
just like
and
with my experience. No, nobody around, right?
so then maybe was it feral people? People
I've
that
heard of
live
that.
off the
I've heard
grid.
of that too.
Yeah, and you're like, well, that's even scarier. To
Yeah, pretty much.
me, some person who chose to live out in the woods and like is sneaking up on your campsite, that's way scarier than Bigfoot.
Yeah, I agree. There's nothing more dangerous than a friggin' human, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
I would hope it was a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
But that, like what brought it all crashing back for me. My first kind of weird experience that it was probably about 10 years before that one I told you. We went up to a buddy's cabin north of the city. This is when I was still living in Sioux Falls, and I was just sitting around a campfire. All my buddies went into the cabin and were drinking, watching a sporting event, and I just stayed out with my back to the woods, uh, watching the fire. Just
Right.
chilling.
Yeah.
cool being out there by myself, Well, they all come out, they're making a huge amount of noise and everything, and the one guy goes, "I know what this party needs," and he goes into his shed and he pulls out a bottle rocket, or not a bottle rocket, but a Roman candle.
Right.
Well, as soon as the first swoosh went up in the
Yeah.
air, I thought a tree behind me was coming down. I mean, like the whole tree. It was like crack, 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 crack. All you like branches and leaves, everything. I didn't even see the fire because I was so afraid I was going to get crushed. And so I toward the darkness, and like I'm flinching like this, kind of covering up, and I hear like thud thud thud, four thud moving away from me super fast. And I always equated. I grew up. We had horses, and like when a horse jumps to go away from you, you can feel it in the ground as much as you can hear it.
Right.
I felt the thuds, and I didn't see anything. My friends, they're drunk and stuff. Um, the next day, when I woke up, I went out in the area. Well, it was kind of in the fall, so the leaves were already dead, so you couldn't tell if it was a fresh branch or not. And the only branches on the ground, one that might have been the branch that got broke, it was only about like maybe that, But I imagine I know pruning trees, and you cut a branch, and you have to pull it through the other leaves and stuff, and
Right.
all
Right.
the other branches kind of stuck with each other, you know.
Right.
So I mean, it probably made it sound way bigger than it was. Plus, it was startling, and it was behind, and I'm like, we're talking, like just right behind me,
Right.
and I'm like, well, what the hell was that? And people are like, oh, maybe it was like a squirrel or something that jumped out of the tree, and I'm like, yeah, it was way bigger than a squirrel.
Right.
And they're
Have
like,
you
well,
ever have you ever seen any prints after? You ever look and
well,
no?
it was all dried ground and all like dried leaves all over the place.
Right.
So yeah, wasn't going to see any tracks. And then other people like, oh, there's like a moose or a deer or a bear. Bears are pretty noisy usually. You can kind of hear them breathing. And I don't think he would have hesitated and just stood behind me. You know, Bears aren't normally patient if they're going to attack somebody.
Yeah.
And same thing
They,
with like a
they can't see very good at all, bears. I think they're almost
yeah.
blind. They kind of rely on everything but their eyes.
I haven't heard of them much at nighttime, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a wildlife expert.
Right.
But all I could think is whatever it was behind me. The question is, how long was it behind me?
What could have been sitting there watching?
Yeah. And I would listen to like Kumbo and Bear on Bigfoot Outlaws, and they talked about like how Native American the biggest insult you could pay on your enemy was to sneak up behind him and touch him without him knowing. And they called it like counting coup. Counting coup on somebody was like to sneak up behind them and then touch them and leave, and not actually attack them. And they were kind of talking about like maybe that's kind of interesting for Bigfoots too, to see how close they can get to someone. So
Hmm.
no matter what it was, something big was behind me. So that was
Right.
unnerving. And that's when I went back down the rabbit hole, like a Bigfoot. That's what really got me started again, was watching. Like back then, all you had was like uh, Facebook, or the internet was pretty new, so you had forums that you could go on to, and people
Right.
would talk Bigfoot and that. So then, like it became a huge interest of mine, and then I always like looking at stuff. And then it wasn't until that camping trip, like in 2019, that other stuff happened. And
Yeah. It's
it opened
pretty
your eyes.
pretty
Get
interesting.
in the woods, you're going to pay more attention.
Right. No, pretty interesting, and yeah, I find it fascinating, and
Have you
yeah.
ever gone camping again up there? Or?
No, I probably have, but nothing out of the ordinary I
Mm,
noticed. But I think my brother, I might tag along with him.
mm,
My brother's gonna go on a bighorn. He's gonna go hunt a bighorn sheep.
yeah.
So I'll probably go with him. We'll have to walk. We'll be walking at least a day into the mountains,
Mm,
like nothing around. So it might have some activity there for
mm.
sure. It'll be at the northern tip of the Rocky Mountains, I think, by a place called Grand Cache. So it doesn't get any more wild than that. So I'll definitely be, keeping my bearings of of them for sure when I go with him here in September. So
Yeah, my nephew will talk about like, yeah, here there's a lot of people in the Appalachian Mountains that like feral people,
that's
like
what
keep.
I've heard too. Yeah.
So, and like I said,
Whole
maybe,
Appalachian Trail.
yeah, and then you always have like a lot of your drug cartels and stuff grow marijuana and that on public land.
Right.
That's even scarier too.
No, it is. It is scarier.
Mhm.
Not someone you want to have anything to do with, that's for sure.
Yeah, but when you're going up there, when are you going up there for that?
I think September is when he's gonna go. So um
And do you,
it'll be getting cold at night already in September in the mountains for sure. It'll be below freezing in the evening. So it'll be kind of a neat experience because like I say, you can't take a quad or anything. You got a backpack and everything in, go light, and yeah, it'll be cool whether it'll be just a good experience whether he gets a sheep or not. Hopefully not, because then I don't have to help him pack that thing out. And no, it'll be
you're,
cool. It'll be something new.
you're not going to hunt yourself, or
No, I'll just go with him. And if just me and him go, or if you get a bighorn sheep,
mm,
that's a lot to pack out just for two guys because you're gonna have your tent, everything with you. So yeah,
yeah,
it'll be enough work. And I hunt a little bit. I've only shot deer, and
mm,
I like going for birds like upland birds like grouse and partridges and stuff like that, and that's about
mm,
it. But no, it'll be a fun trip. And it'll be so far high in the mountains, it'll be like at the tree line or above the tree line, so it'll be kind of cool.
mm. Yeah, I'm looking forward to like getting out again, just like I said, if nothing else, just to get out.
I agree, it's good to go out and get some fresh air for sure.
Mm. My eyes are having a hard time focusing. My
Sorry.
nephew was saying, yeah, there's a thing on one of the streaming services about like the Emerald Triangle where they grew marijuana and some people getting killed, and they try to make it watches or something. Uh, uh, yeah, nothing scarier than people.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Like you said, I'd rather come into a cross paths with a Bigfoot in the bush than some meth head, or you know what I mean. I'm just being honest. I never thought about it that way till you said it, but you're 100% right.
Yeah, uh, I mean, worst case scenario, Bigfoot might just kill and eat you.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, who knows?
Lord only knows what kind of horrible thing else could happen to you if it was a
Who
person.
knows?
uh,
Unreal. But
but I
yeah,
was looking
never thought.
forward to it, man. Uh, getting a hold of you. Every time I would think about it, like I work overnight. So every time I
Right,
think about calling people or talking to people, it's usually like 10, 11 o'clock at night.
right, night. Yeah.
Like,
What do you do for work, Mark?
I'm a nurse in the ER.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I work overnights. I've worked overnight since like 1992.
So you work different shift, like shift work all over or are you pretty steady on the same shift?
I always stay nights. I always work
Yeah.
7 p to 7 a. On my days off, I'll go to bed around like 3 o'clock in the morning. Right
Right,
right before the birds start chirping,
right.
and then I wake up by like today. I woke up at 10 o'clock in the morning. You know, still get the better part of the day on my days off, and then I don't go back to work. And my wife works overnight too, so it's not like it's hard on the relationship or anything.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, it's the weird thing about YouTube is people for a long enough period of time, you kind of feel like you already know them, and then you get to meet them and actually talk to them. It's usually pretty fun. You kind of do
Yeah,
know what.
you're right. It kind of gives you your subconsciously have know the basic amount about them before you talk, just because you've watched them and you kind of get you understand their style more before you,
That
right?
was like the biggest thing that people talked about with the No Name Nationals. It's like how seamless it was. You didn't have to, hi, my name's this, I'm from this channel.
Right.
There
Everyone knew who everyone was.
certain people you didn't know what channel they were from, but it didn't matter. And the irony is there's so little filming going on there because everyone's just having a fun time hanging out.
No, I hear you. A lot of people now, like I'm a big boxing fan, and I haven't gone for a while, but when I used to go see the pro fights in the city, I'm sitting there close as I can get to the ring, and I'm watching the fight. And you look around, and everyone is looking at it through their phone, filming it. Like, what are you gonna do? Go home and watch the fight on your phone later? Or like, why don't you just take it for what it is at the moment?
Exactly.
And I see the same thing with concerts and stuff too. I don't know. The phones have really screwed up how a lot of people's brains work, in my opinion.
Hmm. Yeah. And like when I go to car shows and stuff too, I kind of do like a walk around and just enjoy myself and like occasionally like talk to different people and stuff. But then it's not till later that I go around and I like do my footage of the cars and stuff.
Right. You do
I,
your own thing first. Yeah.
yeah, and then nobody even notices really when I'm videoing. I mean, they know I'm videoing, but like I can videotape a car the way I want to, and then videotape. Listen to me, Mister Old Man. But I can get all the angles and stuff that I want. I'm filming a car and be gone without breaking step.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and I don't tell people, "Oh, I've got a YouTube channel." I'm
Right.
gonna
Right.
figure.
No,
I always feel awkward when I do that. I don't like being on camera myself. I like
I I'm kind of the
editing.
same way.
I like videoing and I like editing and I know that like my car content's kind of thin, but I like it's more visual, and that's why I use a lot of music too, because it's like music's important to me too. So it's like
Right.
this car triggers this kind of theme,
Right.
so this music to go along with it.
What kind of music are you into? Like personally, what do you like?
Oh, dude, lately I've been into like stuff that I probably wouldn't have listened to much. I really been into like early '80s songs like Berlin, No More Word, or yeah, No More Words. Like weird kind of like uh, oh, like Kim Wilde. Anyway, I go in phases. I like
Right.
heavier stuff. I listen to a lot of like kind of alternate country type stuff, but then I have my heavy stuff, and then I'll go back nostalgia wise and listen to stuff I listened to in high school and that, when you're
Right.
growing
Right.
up.
Yeah. It's kind of neat how you'll hear a song you haven't heard for a while, and it just kind of brings back a memory of a time and a place when you're a young man, and yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind
and
of
you
cool.
even maybe you didn't like the song then, but suddenly you like
Grow-
the song,
Yeah, it
doing
grows
something.
on a person. Yeah.
You get kind of like the double fold, the memory and the men. I'm gonna have to bump a light on. But yeah, but yeah, usually it's a matter of what I'm doing at the time is what I
Yeah.
want to. Sometimes podcasts get to this point, like where you kind of start to run out of little things here. But I've enjoyed talking to you, man. And
No,
like I
I
said,
agree. I agree. No, I really enjoyed talking to you and telling my story and hearing yours. And like you were saying, we've known each other, through YouTube for like probably 4 years now. So it's kind of
yeah.
neat.
Well, and like
Neat
my buddy
to each
Chris,
other.
I've done these live streams with my buddy Chris, and when we call each other and talk, we talk this long. you know,
Right. Right.
I thought
No.
this would be a fun way to like have the conversation, and then I think it's this type of live stream, is a little bit more fun when you're actually talking to the person. Because
Yeah.
sometimes when you like, StreamYard and you got guys up there, it's I don't know. I think a one-to-one conversation
Yeah. It's
more.
like you and me are sitting around having a drink, just talking like we would on the couch, or you know what I mean? Yeah.
And I feel bad because I try to keep like eye of what's going on like in the in the comments and stuff too. So if I like probably had a critique, it'd probably be that times maybe I don't interact with the comment section much, especially my own nephew. Jeez, he's been
Well,
bugging me to get back to balls. When he was a little kid, I used to tease him that I was going to use him as Bigfoot bait. Like,
that's,
okay,
I
like
mean,
I'm going to stick you out in the middle of the woods, and if you see a Bigfoot, the signal will be like "caw."
yeah, that's funny. That's funny. What kind of weather you been having in your parts?
Oh, it's been raining a lot, and actually, it's
Okay.
not been. Today was a little muggy because it was kind of raining, but
It was muggy here
yeah,
too, but we didn't really get any rain. It just was ugly looking out.
yeah. You guys have been getting a lot of rain and flooding.
No, we could probably use some right now. We had a hot last week, and we haven't really had more than a few drops in last week. I think it hit 95 on, which is hot for me. My parts at 95. I think was Tuesday or Wednesday. It hit 95, but it's been a pretty hot week. Today's probably only 70 out, but that's all right. But we could probably use some rain.
Yeah. I thought because of the winter we had, this whole summer was going to be super hot and dry, but it's
Hard-
been the
It's
opposite.
hard, it's hard
It's
to
like
say.
it's like Seattle, where it like rains at least 20 minutes every day.
Yeah. No, we could use some. It seems one thing, like as for the climate change and stuff, I don't see any difference in my 40 years here. But
Yeah.
one thing I will say I've noticed is we have more wind here than we did when I was a kid. There's more windy days now.
Mhm.
So even if you get rain, it seems like the wind dries it up. It doesn't get a chance to soak into the ground like it used to. So, yeah, but no, we had a very cold spring, and we've just actually it's starting to feel it feels like summer now. But if you would have asked me 2 3 weeks ago, it was still so cold out. It felt like May to me still. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Now, are you guys on the like east side? You're on the east side of the mountains.
yes, I'd be 3 hours from the mountains, roughly two and a half, three
Probably
hours.
probably catches some of the weather, huh? Like rain and stuff.
Kind of how it works. Well, you watch hockey at all or anything or no?
No.
No. No. I was gonna say because we're like the Edmonton Oilers, and we're the ones that used to have Gretzky and stuff back in the day.
Yeah, I think King Eric made a comment about the Oilers a while back in the
Oh, could have
comments.
been, could have been.
Is Sioux Falls had a minor league hockey team called the CT, and I always enjoyed going and watching live. I like going to live sporting events, but I've never
Right.
been able to.
I don't. A lot of people like hockey, and we came close to getting the Stanley Cup this year. But I used to watch it as a kid, but I don't know. It doesn't do anything for me now. Like I my favorite sport is boxing, and then probably baseball next to boxing. But even boxing, I don't watch as much as I used to when I was younger. And I don't know, life happens.
Mhm. Yeah, I like to kind of catch up on boxing, and like there's a big fight, I'll watch it.
Yeah,
Uh, it was always interesting. Uh, like the Gypsy King, was up
yeah,
there talking.
yeah, yeah.
But I'm
He's
the same with
he's a good fighter.
yeah, like MMA. I'll kind of watch like stuff here and there too. Like
Yeah,
I'll,
I'll watch it if it's fun, but it's not really my thing. I'm more into boxing, but not to say that I've never watched it before.
like Jiri Prochaska or whatever. Because of YouTube, I like watching all his old fights on his older before joined the UFC and stuff. So when he joined the UFC, I got kind of excited again.
Right,
But yeah, more like if there's a specific fighter I like, I don't just watch every.
right. Someone you like to follow, yeah.
And actually, I work with a couple of guys that have done that stuff. One guy was actually trying to make it, so he was a security guy, and he'd come in and he'd have like a fat lip and a black eye and different shades of bruising all over his face. So when patients would see that, that we're acting up, they'd be like, "What am I getting into?"
Right. Yeah.
This guy not really.
He's probably very level. Most of those guys are very
Oh,
level-headed guys for the
yeah,
most part.
you
Yeah.
couldn't rattle, because he's ready for anything,
Yeah.
So yeah, you could rattle him.
Yeah.
You could
No,
call him
it's a
names.
very any sport is very, very hard to make it to the elite level. And I would say boxing and stuff is even harder because if you don't make it, it takes a toll on a person for sure. Some
Did you
people
ever
more than others.
did you ever box?
Yeah, I used to in my 20s, but I never went professional or anything. But it's if you want to actually do something with it, that's got to be your job. Is
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like you got to treat boxing like your job. So
well,
if you
well,
work, 10, 12 hour day, you don't really feel like going and sparring 10 hard rounds at the boxing gym after. But
well, like when I was a kid, like we moved to South Dakota when I was a freshman in high school,
okay,
and we moved, like into the season, right? So like football had just ended, and the
right,
first guys I met were wrestlers. There's like four brothers that were wrestlers, so they talked me into going out for wrestling. Well, I'd never wrestled before in my life, and
yeah.
it was fun. Enjoyed it, but it was
No,
one
it's a
another
good
one
sport.
where I went late, and first thing I realized when I was wrestling was all these guys have been wrestling since they're 3.
Right. No, I was on the in school. I was always on the wrestling team, and not that I'm the best wrestler in the world by any means, but I'd be better than obviously someone that's
Yeah.
never had any wrestling. And it is a good sport, but I almost found it harder on a person than boxing. In
Mhm.
boxing, you might get a you wear headgear and stuff. You might get a busted up nose or a fat lip, but
Yeah.
that doesn't really hurt. But when you're getting your tendons stretched and stuff, wrestling, you're getting muscles pulled, tendons stretched,
Yeah.
joint pain, that you notice more because it affects you in anything you're trying to do, your back sore. So, but no, it's, I think any young guy should try out the wrestling in school. So,
So when I was in junior high, I was kind of a skinny kid. So my parents, this is before it became what everyone does. I took taekwondo, and the best thing it
yeah,
did was teach me not to be afraid of being hit and knew how to not get hit hard. But I never tried to kick anybody thing in a fight. And then
right,
and I would get beat from time, so I wasn't afraid of fighting. And then
right,
college, I kind of started doing taekwondo again, and then some judo. Well, some guys that I knew that were my friends that were in for a fraternity said there was a charity fight night coming up, and they really wanted me to fight for their fraternity because it
right,
was kind of sparring and stuff like that. So we go to these practices to learn the basics of boxing, and there was like three guys in my weight class, and we're sitting there and we're practicing boxing. Well, they had no experience whatsoever. And so I was like beating on him at will. And I'm like, dude, I can't wait. This is going to be easy. Man, I was
yeah,
looking in front of a crowd, I'm like,
right,
man, I'm going to beat the shit out of this dude. Either one, I don't care. Bring
yeah,
it.
yeah.
So I get there and a fourth guy showed up
And he
and
could box.
they're gonna have me fight him. And I'm like, dude never even showed up for practice. I'm like, I'm gonna kill this guy. So I go out there and it's like, and I like all of a sudden a guy's standing in front of me giving me standing, 8 and 10, count,
Setting a count. Yeah.
and I'm like, I had no idea where I was, and I'm like, he didn't hit hard either. It was like I couldn't believe that the guy was stopping it because I didn't really feel like I was knocked out or hurt. I was just dazed. I didn't know what to do. So he lets me go, and all of a sudden, same thing again, and I get a second standing. Like, dude, I'm looking like a bitch out here in front of my friends. So that round ends, and I'm like, dude's killing me faster than me. He knows how to hit me. He's hitting me from every angle. So the beginning of the second round, I'm like, okay, I'm bigger and stronger than him. I'm going to go at him. I'm going to stop short, and then I'm going to jump in. And I'm going to clock this dude. And I did, and it worked. And he got a standing 8 count. And I'm like, okay, tables turned.
And it give you some yeah, it
I,
gave you some
I don't remember what happened after that, except that they stopped it.
oh, that's
I,
that's
I
that's
was glad the guy was there counting in front of me that time. Turns out
no,
the guy was 8-0 at the Air Force Academy.
oh, yeah, he's a pretty good boxer. No, I've been outclassed multiple times too, and it's very frustrating, but it's just the way it goes.
Oh yeah, I mean, and then my buddy Arlen, he went out there and he hit a guy a couple times really hard, and he scared the guy so bad that the next time he went to throw a punch, he missed, and his arm popped out of the socket. Couldn't use his arm, and he kept looking at the ref like, "Hey, dude, we got to stop the fight because I can't use my right arm." But then he noticed the other guy was so scared of him that he finished the fight just
We
using
just, yeah,
his arm. And I'm like, "Why didn't I get that guy?"
good, good times.
Yeah. Well, it's I understand, like, the whole, like, what it takes to ring, kind of thing. You know, yeah, there's definitely an art to boxing. That's
Yeah, there's a lot to it. Like, it's a pretty rough area where I live, and there used to be a gym down the street, and it had people from all walks of life, we'll put it that way. And I've seen, kind of punk kid 14, 15 come there, and he's fighting in the street and he thinks he's so tough. And they'll throw him in his first day with like a 10-year-old that's been boxing since he was 5, right? And that friggin' little 10-year-old will light him up so bad that the guy he can't even throw a punch because anytime he throws he gets countered and
mm,
just catches air. And it's pretty neat to watch that. Just, people that think they're, just going to do this, that, and the other thing. Yeah, it's
mm.
a real eye opener for them, that's for sure. But
And the only, like, real thing, like, from the whole, like, karate and all that stuff was, the desensitization of the worry about getting hit. You know,
no,
uh,
no, I think you're right. Once you kind of know how to take it and you're used to it, it doesn't really frighten you because you've already had it happen, so many times for sure.
yeah. And but then things got bad. I mean, like, when I was a kid and you would get in a fight, the worst thing that would happen is you get like a fat lip or a black
Yeah,
eye,
yeah.
and then usually it stops. But then in today's society, next thing you know, they're coming after you with
People
guns.
are, yeah. You get people lose their life for absolutely nothing every day these days. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's quite
And
sad as a
then
society.
I've gotten old and fat, and I'm not the same Mark I used to be, and
Yeah,
that's hard to sometimes.
it's
Someone
part of
start
life.
talking, someone start talking shit, and you'd be like, 20-year-old Mark would have already either got his ass kicked or done something about this.
Right.
58-year-old Mark just gonna let it roll off his back.
Yeah, that's the best way to do. There's no
Yeah,
point. People nowadays, people stab you or whatever for or
I
boot you
know.
on the ground for nothing. It's I don't
Yeah.
know, generation. I don't know.
A lot of that changed for me because a buddy of mine did stabbed to death. He was working as a bouncer in a bar, and a guy he kicked out the night before came back, and when he was throwing him
Yeah.
out, that
So
stabbed
for
him to death.
absolutely nothing,
Yeah,
I lost his life. Yeah.
and from that point on, I never ever wanted to even get to the point where I'm in.
No,
Because
that's a good way to look at it.
you know,
Yeah.
and that's this game anyway. When you're young and trying to test yourself, and you know,
No, that's true.
it's always fun to think.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's not worth it. I know you'd like to do something, but it's best these days just to walk away because, like I say, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble in very little time for something that wouldn't matter the next day. So yeah, I don't know. Well, Mark, I should probably let you go here soon. I still haven't ate supper or anything yet. So
Yeah.
um,
Hey, it's great talking to you, Nolan. And,
yeah,
anytime you want, usually after 4 o'clock, if you ever want to call or bullshit or something, we don't even, not even necessarily alive, or if you do want to do
yeah,
this
yeah, yeah,
again,
for sure.
it'd be fun to have you back on, or otherwise just to talk. Right.
Yeah, yeah, and if anything happens, that's cool. When I go on that sheep hunt, if I go, you'll be the first guy I let know. How's that?
All
All right.
right.
So it's nice
Hey,
talking to you.
I do have that other channel, so I think I do want to get set up for StreamYard because that channel's so small I can't do this where you have a guest on. And
Right.
if I get StreamYard set, would you mind recounting those stories again?
Oh, for sure, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right,
Okay.
talk to you.
Have a good night, buddy. Take care.
Good night, Derek.
Yeah, see ya.
Yeah, Derek's my nephew.
Yeah, yeah, you're saying. Okay, see ya.
Later.